Hello and welcome to Hazard and Hope. I'm Ed, and in this episode of Our Flood Resilient Business, we're heading to the village of Mytholmroyd in the Upper Calder Valley to hear from Lisa, who runs the Blue Teapot Cafe, about how flooding's affected her business and the variety of different ways in which she's adapted the property and her practices to be more flood resilient. So here we go. This episode of Hazard and Hope is sponsored by Yorkshire Flood Resilience. Now, just to set the scene, the Blue Teapot is a stone and brick built construction with solid floors throughout. It sits just off the main high street in Mytholmroyd and about 30 to 40 metres back from the River Calder. In terms of the flood risk context, you've got 3 different watercourses that actually flow through Mytholmroyd. So you've got Crag Brook, which meets the River Calder at St Michael's Square, and then just parallel to that, you have the Rochdale Canal. But one of the challenges in managing flood risk in the Upper Calder Valley is that it has really steep-sided slopes. So that topography can lead to very fast runoff rates and actually result in surface water flooding. So it can be that actually even when the river's at quite a low level, an intense period of rainfall can lead to very fast runoff rates and severe flooding throughout the community. We're now going to hear from Lisa about how the Blue Teapot's been affected by flooding and the variety of different strategies they've used to make it more flood resilient.
I've lived in Mytholmroyd from being a child. I worked in Mytholmroyd. I'm a trustee for a local charity in Mytholmroyd, so everything that I do is in Mytholmroyd. I worked for Thomson Reuters, who were based here as well, and I was an editorial manager. And then I got the chance to take voluntary redundancy. And I'd always fancied running a cafe. I used to come here on my lunch and thought, actually, I'd quite like to run the Blue Teapot. So I took the voluntary redundancy, and in August last year, I made the leap from being an editorial manager to being a cafe owner, and we opened the start of September.
What were your first few months of experience in the business here?
The first few months were great. It was harder than I expected it to be. It was a really steep learning curve. I thought I'd just come in and set a few tables and it'd be great. And actually, it was really, really hard work. And it was a lot different to what I expected. But I was just starting to kind of find my feet. We had Christmas, we did really well over Christmas. Started looking to what we could do in the new year and how we could continue to build the business up. And then the 9th of February hit and the floods, and it threw everything up in the air. And it was awful. I was watching the weather forecasts overnight and thinking, this is it, it's going to flood, it's definitely going to flood, and kind of watched. And as soon as light came, I came straight down, had a look to see what I could do within the property. It was already, the floodwaters were already knee high when I got here. So I had to wade down, got into the building, lifted chairs on top of tables, did anything that I thought I could do just to try and rescue anything. The counter that we had at the time was solid and fastened into the ground, so I could see all my equipment, the fridges, the freezers, the really expensive equipment that I just could not do anything with. I just had to leave it. And then eventually I thought, right, I've got to get out now. And I went to leave through the front of the building and thought, I'm going nowhere. I couldn't get out. The water was already coming in. It was coming up in here. The toilet was exploding, and I just thought, I'm stuck. So I ended up, we've got a back door, got out of the back door, climbed up a wall, and as I got to the top, I thought, that's it, I can't get up any further. And some young lads just happened to be, there's a memorial garden behind us, and they just happened to be moving the wreaths up onto higher ground so that they didn't get washed away. And I just shouted to them, and they dragged down a fence that was up there and literally yanked me over the top so that I was away from the floodwater. And then I had to climb another wall to get onto the canal to get back home again. So it was really scary. It's not something I would recommend anybody doing. It when it happens again, which I'm sure at some point it will. I wouldn't do it. I'd just let it flood and come in and deal with the aftermath.
Yeah. So it rises very quickly here, is that
Yeah,
right?
very quickly.
Within hours and minutes.
Within 10 minutes, I'd gone from being, it was kind of just coming in the bottom of the door, and 10 minutes later I was like thigh high and thought, that's it, I need to get out.
What was the rest of the setup of the building? How was it kind of configured previously?
So before, we had wooden cladding on all the walls. It had a vinyl floor. We had the counter that was fixed. The tables were very different as well. We had chipboard units that would keep things underneath that were underneath benches. So all these things, obviously, as soon as it flooded, we just had to go. So literally everything went. We were very lucky with a lot of our equipment. We've got a very good engineer who managed to dry a lot of it out. It sat in storage, being continuously heated so that it dried out. And we got some of it back, but a lot of things we lost.
So after that flood, when was it that you sort of chose to build it back in a different way rather than just reinstating it?
I think the first week I cried a lot, an awful lot, because I had to literally take everything out of the cafe and put it outside in the street. So we lost all our stock, all the tables, everything, and it was just piled up in the street, and it absolutely broke my heart. Because obviously this had been my dream, and then all of a sudden my dream sat in the street covered in sewage and everything else. So the first week was sort of, right, let's get the building empty and then we can decide what to do. I rent the building, so there was a lot of discussion with my landlady to decide how we were going to go forward. I'm not insured for the contents, but she's insured for floods for the actual building. And my landlady was excellent and said to me, whatever you need to do to get back up and running, you do it. So that gave me the green light. All the cladding went. My head chef is also my best friend, and we've been best friends since we were small children. So she was here 15 hours a day, 7 days a week we did together for 6 weeks. So we ripped everything out and we slowly put it back together. But looking at what we had before, what had been destroyed, and how we could put that back together so it was more flood resilient in the future.
Yeah. And the depths that you chose, because just looking around, you've obviously got exposed brickwork in places, and what was it that led you to choosing that particular height?
It was actually, so the cladding came to this level before, so we looked at where the floodwaters had come to this time and thought, okay, that's a good height to aim for, it'll work for us. So we went with that and then looked at what we could do with the floor and everything else. Like I said before, it was vinyl. We've got granite tiles, so everything is designed so that when it does happen again, we were closed for 6 weeks this time, and we think we can probably turn it around in a week next time and get back up and trading again.
Yeah. So you also, even above that level, you've got the sockets higher as well, so they're fed along the wall?
Along the wall, and some underneath. There's wires underneath there as well. Everything, the kitchen has been moved up high, and the same with the counter. The counter now, not only is it not fastened, but it's on casters. So we flick the casters off, we can totally remove the counter, and then we can take all the equipment out. Everything's on wheels, and we can wheel it to higher ground.
With the paint, is it standard paint? Is it a particular type of paint?
It has, so it's a standard paint, but underneath that we treated it with some brick treatment that means that the water, the bricks don't absorb the water as they did do previously, so they won't take as long to dry out. So in theory, they should dry out a lot faster and we should be able to open quicker.
Fantastic. Yeah, and then the blue is obviously the Blue Teapot tying in that.
Yes.
When you get your alerts in the mornings, how long might you have to prepare and adapt?
You don't get long. So this time around, it came up so fast. There was nothing that I could have done, I don't think. But hopefully next time, I think the Environment Agency and certainly the flood wardens around here, I think they've learned a lot from this time around, and we get more notice now, and we're constantly giving updates on what's going to happen, what they think might happen, so that we can be, even if we have to empty the whole building out and the day after we have to put it all back because it hasn't flooded, I would much rather that than be in the situation that we were in before.
Could you describe some of the conditions for somebody who maybe hasn't been in a flood event or seen what the state of the damage it can cause?
It's devastating. There's no other word for it. I think until this time, when I was personally impacted, I did not understand just how badly it can affect you, your mental health, everything. It's awful. Today we've been brushing up outside, and one of my staff was doing it and I was inside, and the sound of her brushing on the floor gave me anxiety because that was the sound of brushing the water out. So it's, even 6, 7, 8 months down the line, it doesn't leave you. You still have that in the back of your mind. It's awful.
And the smell as well, I imagine that's one of those things that's been be for a while.
The smell is horrific. Yeah, the damp, from coming in and the sewage smell to then the damp and the cold, and it doesn't leave you. And even now, even though I know that we're quite well prepared, the thought of having to go through that again does strike fear into me, I've got to admit.
Many people think that they can just wade through it, or it's only floodwater, but it doesn't take much moving at high speed to knock you off your feet, does it?
No, absolutely not. And if the things that, the equipment that we've got, the great big industrial fridges and freezers, and they were tipped on the side. The water literally lifted everything up and threw it about and then dropped it down again. So had I still been here, I would have been in serious trouble.
Do you feel that with the adaptation measures you've taken, that's something that's improved your sense of well-being with the business and the place, and I suppose provides a degree of kind of comfort knowing that you've taken out the elements which were going to be vulnerable? Yeah,
I've definitely got a degree of comfort. I think until that first flood happens and I can see how quickly we do get back up and running, I think that element of fear and the effect on my health is always going to be there.
But when you did consider how you might adapt, was it the recoverable approach was the kind of go-to one, or did you think about larger scale sort of resistance barriers?
There were other options, and there are definitely other options that I would like to pursue going forward. So rather than just having a floodgate, actually having flood doors. And a big element to how much we did was the finances. We only had so much money to be able to put the building back together again.
Yeah. I suppose with something like a home, you could be in rented accommodation while it's being repaired, but for you guys, clearly it was about getting back up and...
because every week we were losing money. Yeah. Every day that we closed, we were losing money. But this is a fantastic little community, and literally from day one, there was a constant stream of people coming in saying, right, what can I do? What do you need? And we did the bulk of the work we did ourselves. We had lovely tradesmen that came in and offered their services. So a painter and decorator came in and painted it all for us. An electrician came in, did all the electrics. We had hygienic cladding put in the kitchen, which is flood resilient. So a lot of people helped us out. But the bulk of the work we did do between me and my friend Tina, we did the bulk of it ourselves. We joke that we could now open a construction company.
I think it's empowering, I imagine, to be able to know that you can put that back as it was, and there's not a degree of separation in understanding how to repair or reinstate that particular element.
No.
That's great. Would you be okay to show us around and show us what you've done?
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything before was quite oldie-worldy tea room, and it wasn't the direction that I wanted to go in. Eventually I wanted to be more of a bistro, so this gave me the ideal opportunity. It's like, right, okay, well, we've lost everything, so let's think about how we want to take the business forward and let's design it to that end goal. So that's what we did. So all the little lights were taken out, and we've got these kind of nice spider lights now, and we've got them in the other room as well, and just brought it a bit more up to date than it was. It's putting that positive spin on it, looking at it and seeing, right, okay, how can we make this better than it was before, and doing it, which is what we've done, and we're really pleased with how it looks now.
I think it's quite cathartic to sort of change the memory of that space and sort of think, actually, no, this is not the one that I came into at that point. This is somewhere fresh and new and different.
I think our customers realise that as well, because when they first started coming back in, they were like, oh, I really like this. Whereas before I thought, right, I'll do the changes really slowly, because customers, if it's too much of a change, they'll be like, oh no, and they might stop coming. Whereas they've walked in and gone, actually, it's amazing, I love it, and better than it was before, which is great. That's what I wanted to hear.
That out there is the railings.
Yes, and the brick wall. I was really lucky. My dad had been doing some work and he'd left some ladders up against the wall, because otherwise there's no chance. I'm 5'5" and that tower's above me. There's no chance I would have got out otherwise. So we've got quite a small kitchen, so we've had to put things back near enough where they were, but what we have done is everything's higher, so all the sockets are higher. Anything that we had plugged in lower down is now higher up. The counter was the biggest issue that we had, because it was a big counter and it was solid to the ground, fastened into the floor, and there was nothing I could do. So when I was here, I couldn't take anything out because the counter was a massive obstacle. So now the counter is actually on casters, so we can just flick the casters off and push the counter out of the way, and it'll mean that all the rest of the equipment we can get out. So everything is on wheels and we can push it straight out of the building. So everything that we can is high up, which is great if you're tall. Not so great if you're like me. I have a box that I have to stand on to reach everything, but it's the only way to keep everything so that when it does flood again, we can concentrate on the things that are going to cost us a lot of money to replace, and we can get those out and we don't have to worry about the things that are higher up. And next door we have a cupboard that was a full size cupboard previously, and now it's half and everything's high up for the same reason that if we have a big cupboard, we'll just fill it with stuff. So let's just do half and keep everything out of harm's way. Yeah. So the floodgates, which come to kind of that height, but the water is.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can you switch off the power circuit?
Yeah, so the fuse box is behind here. We can literally, behind the cupboard, so we can literally open it up, flick everything off. Same with the water, we can switch all that off as well and leave the building. We've got very good at clearing out very quickly and things. So where the benches are, underneath there before was chipboard, and now it's brick. So the benches, they're actually storage within. So everything within that is in plastic boxes so that we can take them out. So it's just thinking about the quickest way to get as much as possible out before you've got to go, right, okay, that's it. We've hit that cut-off point, everything else has got to stay.
And the worktops on the tables, do they screw off, or is it
Yes, so they will screw off and we can whiz those out because the metal bases will be fine. That we need to get the wood tops out.
Yeah, that's really smart. And in terms of the recovery and reinstatement, the cost of this resilient sort of setup, how did that sort of how did that come to you?
It's been expensive. Yeah, really expensive. Obviously because we've lost all our tables and everything else, so we've had to replace those. But even in terms of like the granite floor and having all that laid, it was ridiculously expensive. But we had no insurance. My intention had been, I knew it would flood at some point, and my intention had been from day one, put some money aside. I can't get insurance, so put some money aside every month, and then that's my insurance. And when it does flood in 2, 3, 4 years' time, I've got that money there to be able to dip into. Because I'd only been open a few months at that point, so I didn't have the money to be able to do it. I had some money left over from my redundancy pay, and that's what went into it. So I think it cost me about £20,000 altogether to put everything back in and get it as we wanted it to be.
But then I suppose, thinking forward and thinking ahead, that's going to be
it's money well spent from that perspective.
And I suppose it's also peace of mind knowing that you've actually got the property in a way that you can potentially leave it more easily, having done some of those measures, and get yourself to safety quicker and easier. And now, if you got a warning, do you have a particular process or series of measures you take to adapt?
Yes. So as soon as the warning, and we know because we get very early warnings, so you're never entirely sure how much weight to give to those. But we're very friendly with flood wardens, and it's such a small village that people are great at kind of going, right, okay, this is a big one, we need to do something about it. And at that point, the counter will come out, all the equipment will be moved to higher ground, the chairs, the tables, everything that we can remove, we will remove, and then we will put the floodgates on and keep our fingers crossed.
Do the other people in the company know about what to do if you weren't there that day? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm always here. I'm never not here. But yeah, they all know. Like I said, my best friend is also my chef, and she was here all along. So we've got a plan in mind, and we know exactly what to do, and the staff know exactly what to do as well.
Fantastic. After that, how would you move back in and repair, reinstate, or decontaminate? Is there sort of that's the approach that you'd be taking?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, get everything sanitised and then move things in. There's certain things that we will have to do that we haven't done so far. So there's areas that aren't exposed brick that we've had to plasterboard for the time being. At some point, that will come off and we'll brick it so that it's better protected. But it was really important. I got enough money to last me 6 weeks when we were flooded, and we opened dead on 6 weeks. So we really which was where the 15-hour days, 7 days a week came in. It was to make sure that we got to that point. But there are still some things that we could finish off that would improve that resilience.
Yeah. In terms of maintenance, are there particular things that you do?
If we make a change within the building, we're always mindful, right, okay, we need to make sure we do it this way so that when it floods, it's not going to impact it. So next week we're having air conditioning fitted in the kitchen. And the guy came out and he said, right, and I'll put your air conditioning unit outside on the floor there. And I was like, no, up. And he did look at me as if to say, you want me to lift this great big unit up? And he's bringing scaffolding. Because I was like, yeah, because as soon as it floods, that's gone. So everything that happens now, we have to bear in mind, right, okay, it's got to be above that water level.
But it sounds like during that recovery process, there was an incredible amount of community support with the actual works themselves, but also for wanting to see the cafe reopen and get back to business, which is wonderful.
Yeah, we're in the centre of Mytholmroyd. We have a lot of people that come here every day. We have some people that come here every week, but we're in the centre and we provide a bit of a service to people. They come in, we have a chat. There's a lot of people who come in who are on their own and we'll sit and chat with them for a little bit. So it was important for us to be back up and running from a financial perspective, but also from that support as well, and just seeing people within the village. The community have supported us all the way through, and they're coming in now and saying, I'm so glad you've survived and you're still here.
So now, having been through this, would you have any tips to other people who might find themselves in a similar situation?
Yeah, I think the first tip would be, as soon as the floodwaters come, evacuate, do whatever you need to do to make your property as safe as possible, and then get out. That'd be my first tip. And then afterwards, just to look at what you can do to make yourself more resilient for the next one, because certainly in this valley we know there will be another one at some point. So to make it as resilient as possible so that we can get back up and running, and just keep going. Before, we kept all our stock within the building, like you say, the accounts, the paperwork, everything. Things were high, but not high enough. So now everything goes home. So we keep minimum stock here, and I have a garage at home that is an extension of the Blue Teapot. There's things that I need, but I just won't leave it in the building, because with the amount of money that we lost in stock alone was a significant amount. So yeah, I'm not going to put myself in that situation again. I mean, I knew that it was going to flood. I knew that it was only a matter of time before it did. But I did think I would have more time within the business before it hit. So I would just say to anybody, be aware of where you are, be aware that it is going to flood. Think about what you can do to protect your business as much as possible. And then when you're putting things back, don't just put them back like for like, because you're going to be in this same situation again in years to come. So try and think about how you can get back up and as quick as possible and make your place as resilient as possible.
That's really kind of Lisa to have shown us around the Blue Teapot and to have shared those experiences with us. I mean, I think it's an amazing story to hear, because months after buying her dream cafe and getting up and running, she'd been flooded, and she nearly lost her life as well when she'd been trapped inside and got rescued by those people who were passing by. And the journey of recovery sounded incredibly traumatic, but I think what's inspiring to hear is that they've used this as an opportunity to rejuvenate and change the interior setup of the cafe, to put their own stamp on it, and they've done an incredible job, because, as Lisa mentioned, she was a bit nervous about changing things too often, too quickly when the things were up and running and it was business as usual. But they've used that process of recovery as an opportunity to make it more flood resilient, and every time they're putting in a new thing, they're thinking, right, how's this going to work in line with our property flood resilient strategy? Because if it doesn't work and it could be vulnerable or exposed or hard to move, then it could well be lost in the next flood. And a place like this, which is a rapid response catchment, flooding can happen in minutes and hours, and they really don't have much time to adapt. But business continuity is crucial. So, they don't want to be shut again for weeks or months on end. They need to be back up and running as quickly as possible. Clearly, there's still sort of, anxiety and concern as to when that next flood will come again and how they'll adapt. But as Lisa said, that even if it's a false alarm, they'd be much happier to just have known it, gone through these practices and preparations and have evacuated, to know that they won't have to go through the same level of disruption, just chaos and recovery. And So I think that there's a lot that we can learn from this, and I think it's really inspiring to hear. We have also got a 3D tour of the Blue Teapot that's available to view at hazardandhope.com. With this model, you can click to move around it, and there's a variety of different touch points that you can interact with to find out a bit more information. But it might also be that you literally just want to check out that beautiful signature blue that Lisa's used on the walls and doors. Thanks very much for listening. And if you'd like to keep updated on future episodes, please subscribe below, hit the bell for notifications, and we'll look forward to seeing you soon.